What am I trying to achieve? It's an interesting question. Personally, I'm not on a mission. I'm not on a mission of conversion or anything like that. What I'm trying to do is to help people to find the happiness that I've found when you realise that life is a continuity, that the loved ones are free from pain, free from the anxiety of this life. When you see somebody with no pain, no fear, they're illumined, they light, they shine from within. Not in a way that would hurt your eyes, nothing like that at all, but a wonderful light about them. And the garments as they move, the different colours of reds and greens and golds. And to see that, I would work as a medium in all the hardship, and there is a lot of hardship for 1,000 years, just to get one glimpse. Sadly, the people in this world, if we was to, shall we say, fly to Saturn and there was another world of people living there, sadly I look at the world now, how long would it be before we become warlike? Do we want to take them over as well? So perhaps this world, humanity, hasn't reached the level of which it can control itself, never mind someone else. So maybe we hold ourselves back. I don't know, I've not seen an alien. I've seen a few people who are alien though. Well, a spiritual medium is very different to a psychic, however, at least it's got its own part to play. But a spiritual medium, you have to realise that the fundamental thing is that it is a divine gift. And what it allows a person to do is to work almost like a bridge between the two energy fields. Now the two energy fields are the world of light or the world of soul, or this world of which we are in at the moment, which is the earth world. So you're able to work between the capacity of the two. And how it works, the final mechanism, the part of it, people can only guess. But the reality of it is that gift does change. So it becomes an altered state of consciousness. And a medium then is basically, they're like a vessel. So you're filled with the capacity for a period of time. Once it's gone, it's gone. So basically I become just an ordinary person. But when that gift comes in, when it kicks in, then you're filled with spiritual energy, which allows you then to lift the vibration, or it is done for you. And the spirit will basically drop theirs. And so the two fit together. So in effect, we become a bridge. And at that particular point, travellers who are in light are able to cross the bridge to make contact with people who are here in earth. Only for a short time. It's like getting a postcard. But that's simply what a spiritual medium is. That gift is a divine gift. You can't wish it. Many people wish it, but you have it. And sometimes I wish I hadn't had it. I'm not a fortune teller. Nothing wrong with fortune tellers. They've got their part to play within the tapestry of life. But no, it's a lot of people say it's just purely to give proof. I've always found that a difficult word. What is proof of survival beyond physical death? What I believe is that we have the capacity to help people to reach their own truth, almost as if to give a key. So it doesn't matter what you say, what you do, yes, it will help to ease the pain, but ultimately we all take the final step, which is from one dimension into another dimension. Mm-hmm. So life is like, shall we say, a record that's going round and round. There is no end, because really there's no beginning. And we're at that point now, which the great Eastern religions look at, is that we're in a time where we're in this life. And ultimately we must go into another life, into another dimension. And that other dimension, like all the great religions, believe that it's eternal life and waiting for us there, people who we have known and loved in this life. My mother was born in a gypsy caravan, and my father's grandfather and grandmother were gypsies. It doesn't mean to say that because the gypsies were all clairvoyant or psychic. It doesn't mean anything like that at all. But anyway, I decided I could tell fortunes, and as quickly as I could think about it, all these names kept coming to my head and all these situations. And it was about 12 months or so, 18 months later, and I met this woman again. And she couldn't believe it. Everything I told her was spot on, anything come true. And I thought, oh. But I was aware, so I knew that there was something. I remember very, very clearly with my grandfather. I can remember communication in a way, but it was so natural. And many people who are watching this video will have children who are inspired, or they think they've got invisible friends. And of course it happens because the spirit world is but a breath away. I think it gradually moved along through different things. I remember in the early days, just small things, and they're often, people say to me, what can you remember? Well, in all honesty, I've read books about people who can say they can remember this and they can remember that. When you're given information, it comes and it goes. It's not for me, it's for other people. So there are odd occasions when you get certain little things that really do mean a lot to you. I once had a chance to talk to my mother about it, and apparently even from a very, very small child, I would be able to talk about the munitions and what happened in the Great War, the First World War, to my grandfather, the armaments, and sadly how people were physically killed, and even to go back to the wars before that. He was a regimental sergeant major. I didn't know that, he was my grandfather, but I was able to talk that, and people say, oh, what's he on about, ask Stephen, and you say, well, just let him talk. And apparently people used to come into the house, and I would just change from being a child into quite an adult and give them information. Well, obviously to anybody, people go through a great trauma, whoever they are, if they're close to anybody, and a lot of people can be with animals. We can often be closer to animals than you can be to human beings, and many people experience that. When he passed, and the tragedy was he had cancer, and at quite a young age, he was only 46, and he had suffered terribly towards the end of his passing, and I was still in the Royal Navy, and he passed on a Friday, and he was that much pain. I always remember going over in Nottingham, there's a bridge called Clifton Bridge, and I went over there, looked at the sky at 3 o'clock, and exactly when he passed. Beautiful blue sky, and I wished he'd passed because I didn't want him to suffer anymore. When I got to the hospital or where he was, of course he'd passed. My next big experience, which was a most enlightening experience, was when we went to the undertakers, and we was asked to go and see. I always remember as a child over, and there in the coffin, I walked up and I wondered what to expect, and I looked into the coffin, but the person in the coffin wasn't my dad. Again, the spiritual part was starting to kick in again at that time of my life. It wasn't him at all. What was left was a shell. The real part of my dad had moved on. I knew that. It was so clear, so vivid, I knew he'd moved on. That wasn't him that was left, which is not. This is a physical body. It returned to the earth. It'll prove to be dust. It'll prove to be the plankton for future generations. The soul is immortal, can never die. And at the moment of physical death, we move forward. We don't wait in alleyways and darkened areas. We move forward to be greeted by 1,000 outstretched hands. Take us home to eternity. So I saw my father through, often many people do, through the landscape of a dream. And I was in the Navy, and I was reenacted a situation of going back to the hospital in my car, which was a blue car, a Ford Popular. I've got out of the car, just normal as it is here, walked up the drive, went into the room, and he wasn't there. Looked to the right, and there was my dad. Behind him was a most beautiful lady, a nurse. I didn't really take too much notice of her. I was to many years later, because she works very closely around me. And I call her Agnes, so that's not a real name. She was a lady, sadly, was left this life in that terrible place called Auschwitz. But Agnes is often around me. But there's my dad. He showed himself. He said, look, I'm perfectly all right. And I remember looking at him in amazement. He said, look, mate, look, Stephen, I'm perfectly all right. He was only a small man. And his stomach, which had been terrible, he banged his stomach. He said, look, I'm perfectly all right. And I said, and I'm going, but, and he said to me, I want you to do me a favour. Will you promise me? So I said, yes. He says, promise me you will never, ever worry about me again. And I said, I won't. He said, no, I want you to promise me, because I'm in a far better place than I've ever been before. I found happiness, true happiness. It's wonderful where I am. Never worry about me again. Will you promise me? And I said, yes. And in that moment I came back. That would be over 30 years ago. It's as clear now as I tell you as it was then. I was very fortunate. I didn't know where I would go, but eventually I finished up through a wonderful medium called Steve Tomlinson in Nottingham. I finished up at Jack Corbett's. Why? Because when you've seen that, when you know life is a continuum, when you know there's no death, then what greater stimulus can you give to help other people achieve their goal, to give them a little bit of light, to give them some comfort. And that's what it's about. I'm not an ego trip. There are a lot of people, sadly, nowadays are. But I don't want to do that, because what I've got, if others can reach it, fabulous. That's what I'm really all about. Spiritualism has changed, sadly, tremendously over the last few years, and particularly over the last 10 or 15 years. And it's gone from being, when I first got involved, nearly 30 years ago, and particularly with Jack, it was looked upon as a truth. I didn't see it as a religion. Don't believe I'm a religious person. I feel spirituality, you step beyond religion. You're into a world. When we go into the next world, just because you're a spiritualist doesn't put you any further down the path of light. The sad thing is that there are a lot of people who I come across who want to be a medium. And one of the first questions, there's a wonderful lady in spiritualism, a wonderful medium. I shouldn't really mention her name, but she was she's still working medium, and there are some wonderful mediums. You can mention Gordon Smith as an example of somebody who is of the higher level. The great Gordon Higginson was a wonderful medium. We've had many, and most likely if I start mentioning names I'll miss somebody, so I could upset them. But we've talked of modern spiritism, but we are from the dawn of time. There's always been people who are in touch. There are people in touch in countries that perhaps have never seen white people. Perhaps it could be in the deepest, darkest parts of the Amazon. There are people in touch. They're most likely more in touch with the spirit world than we are. We seem to have lost it. But if you look at it nowadays, there is... I can remember the great Doris Stokes. And I call her the great Doris Stokes. I had the fortune to see her only once. I read her book once, and after about 5 or 6 holidays, I'm up to about page 100. I've actually only read 3 books on spiritualism, which Doris Stokes was one of them. So I've read very little. I look around, there's a greater book, and the book is the Book of Life, and I look at that. But what happened, when Doris was there, she did a wonderful thing to me, apart from blaze a trail. And she wouldn't, I dare say in the spirit world, say she was not the greatest medium, because there's no such thing as the greatest medium. There can't possibly be. It's like saying he was the greatest footballer. Well, it's a subjective statement. You can't possibly be that. But she did the wonderful thing. She worked very much with children, but she also took away darkness, which took away fear, for millions of people. And that, highly commendable, wonderful, that is. What's happening lately, and again this shift, and I'm in no way knocking people who are on the television. Perhaps one day they might have me as the grandfather at my age. I dare say I will be, because I am more becoming the elderly statesman of this sort of work. Definitely not one for television. I'm not photogenic. But there are people who want to be there because they want to be there. Where spiritualism has become quite insular. And, it's looking inwards. And I think that's sad, because we should allow people their own freedom of spirituality. If you want to look at it from that level, they have their own teachings and things, which I've got no problem with at all. I've got no problem with the 7 principles. I think that's quite a wonderful piece of information, as with the 10 Commandments. It doesn't make me any better. I'm not particularly looking at it that way. But that is a part of spiritualism. But what it's changed, it's become more orthodox. And what you've got is this. At one time, I used to think I'm different to them. I'm a universalist. So what do? Start another sect? No. Let people do what they want. But what I think it should do, it should be more tolerant. Not everybody wants to do it all the time. No way do I want to get people to become spiritualists. No way is that what I'm... All I'm here is being given for a period of time, a light. And if I can hold that lamp while I'm here, and that lamp can take away fear, can take away darkness, can bring greater love and capacity, then that's what I do.